to listen to my presentation. I've worked really hard on it and I hope you enjoy it. So my presentation is on the SPED community, society's ignorance. And what I mean by this is how there's a large amount of people who purposely choose to ignore those struggling with learning difficulties and refuse to really take the time out to understand it and understand the causes and hardships that they go through. And then there's also a majority of people who aren't really knowledgeable on the SPED community either. So that's what I'll briefly outline throughout the entire presentation. And again, I really hope you enjoy it. So here are just some of the different types of SPEDs that I've, over this course of last week, that I was taught about, which I didn't really have much knowledge about either, but I've gained a good amount of knowledge about it now. So autism is a range of conditions characterized by challenges with social difficulties, repetitive behaviors, possible language delays. There's many different classifications of autism, and these are just some of the characteristics. There's dyspraxia, which affects physical coordination, which can cause clumsiness, the ability to write, grasp small objects, and to time manage. Dyslexia, which is a learning difficulty, which can affect reading, writing, and spelling skills, possible poor short-term memory as well. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is also known as ADHD, affects attention span as well as acting without thinking, extra fidgeting, inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness. Again, these are just some of the types of SPEDs that I've been taught over the course of last week. So not only does SPEDs affect the person, but also the close people around them. The close family members and friends to a person with SPEDs also gets affected, which leads me to some of the information I gathered from the interview I did with Mrs Feury, who is a mother of her son, Jack, who was diagnosed with dyspraxia. She briefly told us how she didn't really notice anything wrong with him at quite a young age until he went to reception, and the school pointed out that he has some characteristics of dyspraxia, and that's the only time they started really looking into it. I think one of the major impacts that she spoke about was how the NHS have a strict criteria that they follow when it comes to diagnosing people with SPEDs. And if that slight characteristic is off, or if your child or person has something that doesn't fit that criteria, then it's quite difficult to get diagnosed. So she did mention how it was quite stressful in the family. It took time, but eventually they were able to get diagnosed. And that's when she said her mental health was quite challenged, in the sense she wasn't very knowledgeable on SPEDs and what it can cause. And so the first thing that came to mind was that her son is disabled. And obviously it's quite a tough time for her as a mother to know that your child is slightly different to everyone else. But the one thing that really helped her was online support groups for parents who have children with SPEDs, and she was able to get support on what they really need and just simple advice. And I think that's what really helped her stay strong for her and her family. Until this day, she still uses these support groups to help her. How it feels to be living with a SPED, the point of view of Hamza and Tahir. And these are two people that I was able to interview again. Amazing people that I got to speak to. Hamza was diagnosed at quite a later age with dyspraxia, as he went to an Islamic school. They never really picked it up. And I think that ties in quite nicely with how culture and religion can affect the way people see SPEDs, and how, they choose to kind of not give it as much importance and not pay attention to children. But he was able to get diagnosed. He did speak about how educationally he struggled with English, but he was very good when it came to speaking. He spoke with a lot of profession and with straight clarity, but when it came to writing it down, it was a little bit difficult. And Tahir, he has dyslexia, and he also struggled with English and writing. And I think when it came to education, they both kind of struggled the same way. Tahir struggled to get into medicine in university. He had to apply twice. With Tahir, he didn't get as much support from teachers, and they didn't really think that he was able to do it. Why? Because of that one label that said, he's dyslexic, and people just automatically think, okay, there's something wrong with him and he's not going to be able to make it far. However, he was able to, the same way Hamza was able to succeed. And they both agreed that once you accept it yourself, you can focus on the positivity and be able to work on yourself and excel to your maximum point, which I truly admire. And I feel like everyone should be given the opportunity to excel to their maximum point. And yeah. With Dennis, it was quite different to the other three people that I was interviewing. Dennis had autism and he didn't really struggle when it came to education, except for English, but he worked hard to get his grades. With him, his social level was quite disrupted. He wasn't very comfortable speaking to other people. And till this day, he still doesn't feel quite comfortable speaking to new people. There was a lot of discrimination against him growing up from primary school to secondary school. And in secondary school, his teachers kept him in set 5 purely because he was autistic. And that limited his ability to excel educationally. And I think that also built up a lot of anger within him. And throughout his younger ages, he had a lot of anger issues, which were portrayed onto other people, but he learned how to deal with it as he grew older. And I think it's great how over the years you can really like focus on yourself and realize what your strengths and weaknesses are and work on yourself to become the best version of yourself. And to summarize all three of what everyone said was that SPED classes should be introduced into the school system so that everyone is knowledgeable on what they understand, and so that no one really has the stereotypical and like stigma against people with SPEDs. And yeah, so in conclusion, I'd like to conclude here that people with SPEDs do not need to change, but society does. And the social standards need to change because many different factors can affect people with SPEDs, and it varies from person to person. Society makes them feel that they need to change or be like everyone else. However, the social standards that have been set definitely need to change. For example, introducing the topic in schools and promoting it on social media with accurate information rather than biased information. Thank you for your time and for listening. I really appreciate it. I actually added on the slide my, what's it called? My references, but for some reason it didn't show up. I did add references though, but yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah.
I think that was really good. Mitchell, do you want to ask first or should I go ahead?
You can go first.
Sure. So my question comes from, so you've spoken with different individuals and you've had a wide range of like individuals. If you had a peer from like school, for example, or like a friend who's recently been diagnosed with a SPED, what advice would you give them, or how would you approach it, for example?
Well, if they came to me and said, you know, I've been diagnosed with a SPED, I would come across it completely different to how I would have before all of these sessions. And I'd probably say, first and foremost, don't listen to what anyone else tells you. Don't listen to your teachers. Don't listen to any of them. Just go with what you think and what you believe. Because at the end of the day, you're the only person who's really going to be dealing with it, no one else. I will recommend a lot of support groups. I will provide support to help them if they need anything at all. I will make sure that they have everything that they need, access to everything that they need, you know, even if it's extra support educationally or if they need help socially, I'll be there for them no matter what. But it's just that they should really keep in mind that what other people say shouldn't matter to them.
Thank you. Mitchell, do you want to?
Yeah, so my question is pretty much related to Mardy's. If you had to summarize in one sort of sentence your main take-home message from being a part of the SPED program, what would it be?
Don't focus on what other people say. Focus on yourself. Focus on how you feel, your mental health. And I think if you think positively at the start, it will make things so much easier. It will make you, you'll just be able to really not see it as something that's negative and just say, okay, this is how I am. and this is how I'm going to live my life, and I don't need people telling me what I can and can't do.